G'day YouTube. Warbles on a lot. Here to speak about the great Australian fish kill of 2019. Brought to us by Barnaby Joyce, the National Party's Minister for Water and the Environment, Minister for Agriculture and Deputy Prime Minister under Tony Abbott and under Malcolm Turnbull as well there for a while till he shat in his nest and had to be persuaded to resign from his ministerial post and become a backbencher. But you see, one of the very first things he did in 2012 when he first became Minister for Water and the Environment was to literally rip the guts out of the Murray-Darling Basin Water Allocation Plan, which had been put together by the Murray-Darling Basin Water Commission, which was formulated to hold an inquiry into the Murray-Darling Basin as a result of the devastation caused by the millennial drought, which didn't finish until 2009, and which Tony Windsor, my local member of Parliament, was the chairman of the commission. And then he was chairman of the commission into the inquiry into the impact of the guide to the Murray-Darling Basin Plan. And every contributor received a copy of the report. So when I heard on today's news that there's been 4 fish kills in 4 different reservoirs around New South Wales, at Menindee, Burrinjuck, Lake Macquarie and the Hume Reservoir, I thought it might be interesting to try and record what they say on today's news and current affairs.
Time in Lake Hume on the Victorian border. The confirmations come ahead of crisis talks in Canberra called to discuss ways to protect river systems during the current heat wave. The state government is deploying water aerators in selected waterways, looking to prevent further fish kills. Regional Water Minister Niall Blair says the aerators aren't a permanent solution, but they might help limit the damage.
They are a band-aid solution, we admit that. Nothing will stop this fish kill unless we get proper river flows and water levels in our dams back up to normal, but we're looking at doing everything we can to try and limit the damage.
US President average. Sydney mostly sunny, a top of 30 degrees on the coast, winds north to northeasterly up to 30 kilometres an hour. Right now it's 28 degrees on the coast, it's 33 degrees in the west, humidity's at 58%. Hot and sunny for most of the week before a cool change on Saturday. This is ABC News.
Hello, welcome to The World Today. I'm Samantha Donovan. This Tuesday, China imposes the death sentence on a Canadian man for drug offences. It appears to be the latest brutal twist in an escalating diplomatic row. And trying marijuana just once or twice may be enough to affect a teenager's brain. The rising crisis in the Murray-Darling River system. The political recriminations over the mass fish deaths are continuing. Yet another kill has been found downstream of Menindee, where up to 1 million fish are estimated to have died. The latest event is in Lake Hume on the New South Wales-Victorian border. Murray-Darling Basin Authority officials are meeting this afternoon to coordinate the response to the disaster across states. Clean-up crews have now arrived in Menindee, southwest of Broken Hill, more than a week after the mass kill was first detected there. ABC reporter Sarah Temevska is at the boat ramp there on the Darling River. The mercury is heading for the high 40s. I spoke to her a short time ago and asked her to describe the scene.
The river has really cleared up, especially when you compare it to what it looked like a week ago. There are still some sort of decaying fish carcasses washed up along the riverbank, but in terms of what's floating on the actual river, there's really not many fish in sight. I can see a few fish coming to the surface. They look like they're struggling for oxygen. I can't tell exactly
on the ground telling you that a lot of the fish have probably sunk to the bottom of the river?
Yeah, that seems to be what's happened. The other main thing is the bird life. Like, nature has taken its course, so a lot of the birds have cleaned up what was on the surface, and the rest that they couldn't eat has sunk to the bottom, and I'm sure yabbies is eating them as we speak.
Could some of the fish possibly have drifted to other sections of the river?
It's not likely, mainly because there's just no flows coming down the Darling. There's nothing to push them along.
So the cleanup crews are there, I understand. Are they thinking they're going to have much to do?
They're going to be cleaning up along an 8-kilometre stretch of the Darling River, mainly the section that directly affects the town of Menindee. So the fish kill occurred on a 40-kilometre stretch of river, so this is a fairly concentrated cleanup effort. They'll get what they can. As I mentioned, if there are fish floating, they'll get what's left, they'll scoop that up, they'll clean up what's left on the riverbed. But really they're here sort of as a standby because they're expecting another fish kill over the weekend, and rather than having to wait another week for a clean-up and for crews to arrive when really it's too late to do anything useful, they'll be here on the ground ready to act.
Is it possible for the crews to drag fish up from the bottom of the river if they have in fact sunk?
They've advised me that they can't do that. All they'll be collecting is what's floating on the top, what's visible. And that's because if they dredge up what's on the bottom, that's likely to make the water quality worse. So they won't be doing what's on the bottom. They're only really focusing on what's at eye level.
Is there a feeling, though, amongst them, do you think, that they've arrived or they've been sent there a little late after, the reports of the initial kill last week?
Yeah, absolutely. I think that it was, by all accounts, the quickest they could get here. That this was organised by the Central Darling Shire Council, but also in conjunction with the state government. So I think this was the earliest engagement that they could get.
Have you spoken to anyone from the council or other authorities who are organising the cleanup?
I have. I've spoken to the General Manager of the Central Darling Shire Council, Greg Hill. He's grateful that the crews have arrived. He's sort of also said it is probably a bit too late to do anything useful for the fish kill we saw last Sunday, but he said that he's grateful the crews are here and that they'll be on standby.
So the cleanup operation today is more so for the contractor to get out on the water and get familiar with the section of the river from Weir 32 right up to the main weir, and also try his equipment out. So that's the idea for today, and then be ready for anything that could happen in the next 24 hours or towards the end of the week.
So they're essentially here on standby?
At this stage, they're here on standby. Like I say, anything could happen. There's probably still a few fish still floating around, so they'll gather them up as well.
Now, most cleanup operations after a fish kill happen within sort of the first 48 hours.
I'm going to pause here for a bit.
Water is one factor being blamed for the fish kills. Today, the New South Wales government has announced aeration technology will be used in the river system to give the fish a better chance of surviving. I spoke to the state's Minister for Regional Water, Niall Blair, a short time ago. Mr. Blair, we're getting reports from our journalist at Menindee that there are no fish in sight and this cleanup is about to get underway, supposedly. Are you getting those reports as well?
Well, look, there was a lot of the cleanup that had occurred last week naturally when I was out there. We've still deployed the contractors to see if there's anything else that they need to clean up, and we'll have them ready.
I'm going to pause again.
The Dubbo was actually from a minor flash flooding event that washed a whole lot of organic matter into the dam at Lake Barnaby and caused, again, a depletion of oxygen and another fish kill there.
May I just clarify with you, the first you heard of the fish kill in the Menindee area was on social media. The river may worsen the water quality. Are you getting similar reports?
Again, we'll leave the clean-up and any of the technical advice to the officials and those that have been engaged to do that clean-up and to provide that advice. I get my reports from my fisheries staff. We're still waiting on the final analysis of the reports from the Darling River, but at the same time we're getting reports coming through of different parts of the state with more fish kills. Lake Cat-Eye, just near Port Macquarie, high water temperatures, the fact that the lake there does not connect to the ocean means there hasn't been any inflows, and we've had a fish kill there. There are numerous reasons why we're getting this, and that's something that we get the advice from the experts.
Finally, Mr Blair, Murray-Darling Basin officials are meeting today with water quality experts and others. Do you think that meeting is going to yield anything?
So no, I wasn't invited. I mean, this is the irony. They want to have a meeting in Canberra from Canberra-based bureaucrats to discuss an issue that they've been discussing for many, many years. I just don't understand what's going to come of it. If they find a silver bullet or they find some more water, I'll be asking, why didn't you tell us about that sooner? But I wasn't invited. So they talk about water managers coming to this summit to have a look at what the issues are. Well, we've had to get a few of our staff to phone in. As I said, I wasn't invited. I don't know if the Minister for Victoria has been invited. I don't know if the Federal Minister is even going to be there. What's going to...
Clearly there's a blame game going on. Okay, that's what they had to say. Maybe 8 minutes worth. And I'm looking at 33 degrees in the ventilated shade under the trees. 1,113 metres up. 1,000 and maybe 500 metres west of the watershed on the Great Dividing Range. And I find it really interesting that the most interesting point, which did not come out in the news bulletin that I just recorded, the current affairs interviews grilling the local shire manager about why they didn't already have equipment to scoop up the dead fish within 2 days of the fish dying at Burke, because it's never happened before that they've needed it, and that's not a council thing. Yeah, distraction. And then we talk a bit to the local New South Wales politician who's boo-hoo and sob he wasn't invited to the meeting in Canberra. Distraction. Whereas the big point, which was actually mentioned in a brief interview in either the 11 o'clock bulletin or perhaps it was the 12 o'clock bulletin, but it was what caused me to decide I wanted to record this, was an interview with a woman who lives at Menindee, and what she said was the big problem started in 2012 when the Minister for Water and the Environment, Barneybaby Joyce, my local MP, decided that it was okay for the upstream irrigators to suck all of their water during the small or light and moderate flows, and to let the environment have all of its environmental flows during the large major flows. You know, like basically if there's such a flood on that the river is over its banks and you can't actually suck enough water out of it to make any difference, that's called an environmental flow. And if there's been a dry time and you suddenly get a rainstorm and there's water in the river, suck that one out. Put it in your tank, your off-stream storage, so you can use that to grow a crop. And that's why the lady at Menindee said 1 million fish died a couple of days ago. There's another couple of million fish going to die in another day or so. Fish are dead in Hume, fish are dead at Port Macquarie, fish are dead to the west of Canberra. Yahoo, yippee, thank you, Barneybaby Joyce. This is what you have done to Australia. You have sucked the water and the life and the resilience out of the inland river system so that your mates, the irrigators, could grow more produce, export more produce, market more produce, make more profit. So that when the drought, which comes as a result of global warming, as a result of burning fossil fuel, all of a sudden there is no water in the river, there is no resilience in the system. Because Barneybaby the Bastard Joyce not only cut back the amount of water allocated to the environment by about 50% on 3 occasions, so the environment got maybe 12.5% of what the scientists said it needed to have to recover from the millennial drought, but also he said that his mates in the irrigation industry could suck all of the water out whenever there was no water falling from the sky, because that's when their crops needed it, and the environment can go to buggery. Because what mattered was the economy, and if you listen to the environmental scientists, you'd never get anything done in Australia anyway. So said Barneybaby the Bastard Joyce, and I despise him for that. Warbles on a lot to YouTube. Ciao.